My mom threw me out at 17. You'll come crawling back. But 10 years later, they were the ones calling me. My name is Nora. I was 17 years old when my life fell apart, and it started with one sentence. My mom pointed at the door and said, "Get out. You'll be back crawling in 2 weeks." My dad didn't argue. He just opened the door like I was a stranger. I walked out with an old backpack, my sketch folder, and shaking hands. I didn't look back. But 10 years later, my phone lit up on my studio desk. 43 missed calls. And this time they were begging me to answer. Back then, I was just a kid with cold fingers and a little hope that still hadn't learned how cruel people can be. I had just been accepted into a well-known design academy across Denver, the kind people brag about online, the kind my teacher said could change my life. I came home holding the letter like it was a ticket out. I thought my parents would finally be proud. Instead, my mom read the words, School of Design and Illustration, and laughed like it was a joke. "Drawing for a living," she said. "That's not a real future." Then she tore the letter in half, slowly, right in front of me. The paper fell to the floor in small pieces, and my stomach turned hard like stone. My dad stepped closer and pointed at my portfolio, the one I had worked on for years. "You will apply for nursing like we planned," he said, "or you leave. No home, no money, no help. Choose." My cheeks burned. My hands were shaking so badly I tried to hide them by squeezing them into fists. "I choose to leave," I heard myself say. Yes, even though my whole body was screaming at me to take it back. My dad's face went cold. "Good," he said. "Pack your stuff. You'll come crawling back in 2 weeks." He opened the door so fast it banged against the wall. I stepped outside, holding my sketch folder against my chest like it was the only part of me that still mattered. I walked down the street under a broken streetlight, and it felt like my childhood snapped behind me like a rope being cut. I told myself I would rather struggle than beg them. I didn't know that one day the begging would come from them. Before I tell you what happened next, I want to ask you something. Where are you reading this from right now? It still feels strange to me that my story traveled farther than I ever did that night. I was Nora, 17, standing on a cracked sidewalk with a backpack and a portfolio. And the only thing that looked like a future was the torn acceptance letter I had stuffed into my pocket. That night, I slept on my friend Jade's couch. She gave me a blanket that smelled like laundry soap and tried to joke like it was a sleepover. But my mind wasn't there. In my head, I kept seeing an image I hadn't even drawn yet. A girl holding a bright painting, while 2 shadowy adults stood behind her, ripping it apart. That picture wouldn't leave me alone. A week later, when I finally stepped onto campus, I was exhausted and scared. And yes, basically homeless. But I also felt something new. Not comfort, not safety, just possibility. The art building smelled like paint and paper and cleaning spray. Students walked around with charcoal on their hands like it was normal. Nobody laughed when I said I wanted to be an illustrator. Nobody called it useless. I used the little money I had saved to rent a tiny room in a shared apartment near school. It was cramped and the heater barely worked, but it was mine. I got a job at a 24-hour grocery store. In the evenings, I stocked shelves until my feet hurt. During the day, I painted until my hands cramped. I was tired all the time, but it still felt better than living in a house where every dream had to match my parents' plan. The first real warmth I felt came from a classmate in my drawing class, a boy named Eli. He always had ink stains on his fingers and messy hair like he forgot mirrors existed. He looked at my first project, a rough sketch of 2 faceless adults towering over a small girl, and he nodded slowly. "There's real anger in this," he said. "Don't lose it. It's honest." I didn't know it then, but that sentence planted a seed in my mind. If my parents had turned my life into a fight, maybe my art could become my voice. That week, I woke up from a nightmare sweating. In the dream, my mom was feeding my drawings into a fireplace one by one, smiling while the colors burned. I sat up, grabbed my sketchbook, and drew the dream exactly how it looked. The next day, I painted it. Every brushstroke felt like a scream I had held inside for years. That painting wasn't pretty. It wasn't meant to be. But it was real. People noticed. A professor paused in front of it longer than she paused in front of anyone else's work. More students whispered things like, "That's intense," and "Who did that to you?" I didn't answer. I wasn't ready to say the words out loud. Money was still a daily problem. My parents had cut me off completely. No calls, no messages, just silence, like I had died the moment I walked out. Then, Right before the next tuition payment, something happened that made my blood run cold. I checked my student portal and saw that my scholarship request had been canceled. Canceled. Like I had done it myself. I hadn't. I went straight to the office, shaking, and asked what happened. A staff member lowered her voice and said someone had called pretending to be me, claiming I had changed my mind and wouldn't be attending the program. I walked out of that office with my stomach twisting. There were only 2 people who would benefit from that. Well, my parents. If they thought sabotaging me would force me to crawl back home, they didn't know me at all. So I worked more hours. I sold small sketches online. I skipped meals sometimes and told myself it was fine. I kept going, and every night, when my room felt too quiet and the loneliness sat on my chest, one question kept circling in my head. Would you walk away from everything you've ever known, even if being alone hurts every single day? By the time the mid-year student show arrived, my anger had turned into a full series. 3 big pieces, a child offering a glowing drawing, 2 shadowy adults tearing it apart, then the child walking away, holding the torn pieces like armor. My mentor, Ms. Patel, told me to submit them together. People need to see the whole story, she said. It's ugly, but it's honest. That's what makes it powerful. The night of the show, the gallery room was packed. There were snacks on trays, quiet music, and people in nice coats holding plastic cups like they belonged there. I stood near my series, pretending I was calm, while my heart punched my ribs. Someone stared at the paintings for a long time and whispered, "This feels real." My phone buzzed in my pocket. Unknown number. I ignored it. Then it buzzed again and again. I silenced it, forcing myself to keep breathing. That's when I felt it. Like the air changed. Not silence, not quiet, tension. I looked toward the entrance, and my chest almost stopped. My mom was standing in the doorway, dressed like she was going to a fancy dinner. Her eyes scanned the room the way they always did, judging, measuring, looking for control. For a second, I wondered if I was imagining her. Then her eyes locked onto my paintings. Her face tightened. She walked toward me, slow and sharp, and the crowd seemed to move out of her way like they sensed danger. She stopped in front of my series and hissed, "What is this?" Her voice was low, but it carried. "Is this how you show strangers your family, like we're villains?" Heat rushed into my face, but I didn't look away. "If it feels familiar," I said, "that's not my fault." Her eyes flashed. She lifted her hand toward the canvas like she wanted to rip it off the wall. For a split second, I was back at home, watching my dad throw my supplies into a trash bag, while my mom said, "You'll thank us later." My stomach turned. "Don't," I said, steady even though my hands were shaking. "You can't touch the artwork." People were watching now. I could hear whispers. My mom forced a smile for the audience, but her eyes stayed hard. "You are embarrassing us," she said. "No," I replied quietly. "I'm showing the truth." Eli appeared next to me like he had been pulled by the tension. "Ma'am," he said politely but firmly, "you can disagree, but you can't threaten the art. Her work is one of the strongest pieces here." A few people nodded. Someone muttered, "It really is." My mom's cheeks went red. She straightened her back like posture could fix everything. "Enjoy your little show," she snapped. "We'll see where this art gets you when you're broken alone." Then she turned and walked out, her heels clicking hard against the floor. The door closed behind her with a soft sound, but to me it felt like the same slam from the night I got kicked out. After she left, something unexpected happened. People gathered around my series more than before. A small local blogger asked to interview me. A teacher from another program asked if I had a website. The drama my mom tried to use as a weapon didn't destroy me. It pointed more attention at my work. When the awards were announced later that night and they called my name for Most Powerful Story Series, my ears rang as people clapped. And one question echoed in my head louder than the applause. When the people who should love you the most turn their backs, do you forgive them or let your success speak back? Life didn't suddenly become easy. The prize money covered rent for a short time, but my parents' anger didn't disappear. It just changed form. First came the angry emails about how I was ruining the family name. I blocked them. Then relatives called with my parents' story, saying I was confused or being controlled by bad friends. One aunt even told me my art was evil. I laughed so I wouldn't cry. The worst moment came a few months later. I was walking home after a late shift when a police car slowed beside me. My whole body froze. An officer stepped out and asked my name. Then he said they had a report about a missing teen who might be in danger. That teen was me. That report was my parents trying to drag me back like I belonged to them. At the station, I answered questions for what felt like forever. Finally, an officer slid a form across the table for me to sign, stating that I was safe, enrolled in school, working, and not being harmed. They couldn't force me home. The report would be closed. As I stood to leave, the officer looked at me with a tired kind of kindness. "Some parents don't know when to stop controlling," he said quietly. I stepped out into the cold air with my hands trembling. Not from fear this time, but from rage. They hadn't called to ask if I was okay. They had called the police to take me back. That night, I started a notebook. Not just sketches, evidence, dates, messages, memories, photos I still had, everything that proved I wasn't crazy, and I wasn't making it up. A month later, a flyer appeared on a campus board, a regional art competition called Truth Has a Price. The winner would get a large grant and a spot in a professional gallery show. The theme hit me like electricity. Truth, price. I knew exactly what I wanted to paint. I created a huge family portrait. My parents' faces were clear and realistic, one but cracked like broken glass. Behind them, I painted the things they were most afraid of: a courtroom hallway, overdue bills, and an empty house. In the corner, the child version of me walked away toward a bright blank canvas like it was a door. I painted until my fingers ached. During breaks, I reread my notebook and let the memories sting, because pain was the color my parents had given me, and I was done hiding it. One evening, my mom called. I don't know why I answered. Maybe I wanted to hear what she would say. She didn't say hello. "We heard you made us look bad with the police situation," she said. "Do you know what people think?" I let out a short, bitter laugh. "You care about what people think more than you ever cared about me." There was a pause. Then my dad's voice came on, sharp and angry. "Come home," he said. "Drop this art nonsense. We'll fix it. You'll do something real." Something inside me snapped clean, like a rope being cut. "No," I said quietly. "You taught me choices have consequences. Now it's your turn." And I hung up. As I stared at the half-finished painting, another question rose up in my chest. If the same people who broke you suddenly asked for forgiveness, would you give it, or let them live with what they created? The competition week felt like standing in the middle of a storm, strangely calm, but dangerous. The venue was huge, a renovated warehouse with white walls and bright lights. My painting hung in the center where nobody could miss it. I had hidden small details inside: my dad's favorite watch, my mom's gold bracelet, the exact pattern of our old living room carpet. Tiny proofs that this wasn't imagination. This wasn't drama. This was real. The morning of the opening, my dad emailed me threatening legal action for defamation. I forwarded it to the organizers. They replied with one clear line: "We support artistic expression." For the first time in my life, adults with power were standing with me, not against me. When the doors opened, the room filled with people: students, critics, local news, buyers. I watched from a distance as strangers stared at my painting. Faces changed as they looked: shock, discomfort, interest. Someone whispered, "That's brutal." Then I saw my parents. They walked in, dressed like they were going to a fancy event, not realizing they were walking into their own reflection. They stopped in front of the painting. I watched recognition hit them like a slap. My father's face tightened with anger. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Whispers started nearby. A journalist looked between them and the canvas like he had found the story of the year. My dad searched the room, found me, and marched over. "Take it down," he hissed. His voice shook. I met his eyes. "No." His face went red. "This is slander." "It's a painting," I said evenly. "And if you want to argue about what happened, I have a notebook full of dates, messages, and witnesses. We can do this in public if you want." For once, he had no answer. My mom stepped forward, eyes glassy and scared. "Nora, please," she whispered. "Things are already bad. Your dad's work. People talk. We're struggling. This will ruin us." The words hit me, but not the way she wanted. All those years they told me I'd fail without them. Now they were afraid I had power. "You did this to yourselves," I said quietly. "I just painted what happened." The judges called everyone for the awards. My heart slammed as they announced mentions, then third place, then second, then the grand prize. They said my name. For a second, everything went silent in my head. Then the room exploded in applause. I walked forward on shaking legs and accepted the certificate and the grant. A reporter pushed a microphone toward me and asked what the painting meant. I took a breath and said, "This is about what happens when the people who should protect you are the ones who break you. Sometimes the only way to survive is to tell the truth louder than their lies." The applause after that felt different. Like people weren't clapping for art only, they were clapping for survival. After that day, my work spread online. I got real opportunities. The grant paid for the rest of school. Then came workshops, commissions, and gallery offers. Meanwhile, my parents' image cracked. People asked questions. Clients disappeared from my dad's business. My mom stopped showing up proudly at community events like nothing ever happened. I didn't chase their downfall. I was too busy building my life. But consequences have a way of finding people. Then, 10 years later, I was 27 and my phone buzzed on my studio table. 43 missed calls from a number I had blocked for years, and only unblocked so I could see it and choose. My parents' home line. I stared at the screen, remembering my dad's voice. "You'll come crawling back." On my wall, a newer painting hung, part of a series that had traveled to exhibitions in different cities. It showed a phone screen glowing with missed calls, and, in the reflection, 2 older faces blurred with worry. I let the phone ring again. Then I answered. For 2 seconds, there was only silence and breathing. Then my mom's voice came through, rough and shaking. I could hear hospital sounds behind her. "Nora," she said. "Please, we've been trying to reach you." "I noticed," I said, keeping my voice calm. "What do you want?" There was a pause. Then my father's voice came on, weak and tired. "We need help," he said. "Medical bills, debts, we're losing everything." A laugh rose in my throat, but it wasn't funny. "I lost everything at 17, I said quietly. "We were wrong," my dad said, like it hurt to say the words. "About your art, about kicking you out, please. We're begging you." Begging. But the same word they had thrown at me like an insult. For a moment, my mind replayed everything, the torn letter, the slammed door, the police station, the threats. Then it replayed other things. The first time someone bought one of my prints, the student who told me my work helped them leave an abusive home, the little kid at a workshop who said, "My parents don't get it, but I'm still going to draw." I walked to my studio window and looked out at the city that had become my real home. "Here's the truth," I said slowly. "I built this life without you. You weren't there. You were the reason it was so hard." My mom started crying softly. "We know," she whispered. "We're sorry. Can we at least see you, talk, try to fix it?" My eyes stung, but I wouldn't let the tears fall. "You want forgiveness now because you're scared," I said. "Would you be calling if you still had your perfect house and your perfect image?" Silence answered me. I could have hung up. Part of me wanted to, but another part of me didn't want to become the kind of person who enjoys someone else's suffering just because they earned it. "I'm not your bank," I said, "and I'm not your safety net. I won't erase what you did." Their breathing changed on the line, like they were bracing for me to cut them off completely. Then I surprised even myself. "But I also won't watch you fall apart just to prove a point," I said. "My lawyer will contact the hospital about a payment plan. It'll be through a foundation, not my personal name. Don't confuse help with trust. Trust has to be earned slowly, if it ever comes back at all." My mom made a broken sound, like relief and shame mixed together. "Oh, thank you," she whispered. I ended the call before they could say anything else. My hands shook when I set the phone down, but my chest felt lighter, like a room that had been closed for years finally got some air. I walked back to my painting of the glowing phone and picked up a brush. In the reflection on the screen, I added one small detail. A door far away, not wide open, not locked shut, just there. A possibility, not a promise, because that's the real ending. I didn't come crawling back in 2 weeks. 10 years later, they were the ones begging me to answer. And I did, but only on my terms. So now I'll ask you the question that still follows me. If the people who threw you out and called it discipline showed up years later with desperate voices and empty hands, would you open the door? Or would you let them stand outside and feel the cold they once pushed you into?